This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. We're here in beautiful British Columbia, and I am joined right now by the one and only Curtis Stone. You can check his link in the channel. It's Off Grid with Curtis. Now, this is a man who's been teaching thousands of people, probably more, how to grow food. Not only that, how to essentially empower their lives by growing food. But Curtis, you are also actually a guy who understands, not only as a farmer, but somebody who understands the New World Order, the coming, Great Reset. So in this hypothetical future of theirs where you will own nothing and be happy, what sort of challenges do you think this is going to, pose for the small-time farmers like yourselves and the people you're trying to empower before they try to turn it into just a whole bunch of corporate conglomerates?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is what we've seen for the last, number of years now, and they're going to force as much stuff into the lower jurisdictions as possible. Just like during the COVID show, they had the corporations do most of this, right? And so they're going to continue to do that same thing. I mean, there's a pretty famous clip now of Larry Fink from BlackRock sitting there on the World Economic Forum saying the way we're going to bring through DEI and the 17 sustainability goals is through corporate compliance, which is good news if you understand a little bit about the law, and that the lowest jurisdictions in the corporate level are the ones that have the least amount of authority on you, but they're the ones that offer the most amount of convenience through their services. And so this is the trend, and I think this is what they're going to keep doing. And so I see a positive side in that if we understand that game, then it's easy to get out of it. But if you're intimidated by that game, then the social pressures and maybe some of the other pressures coming from legislation and whatnot might intimidate you. Now, I'm not afraid of any of it, but the sad thing is that most people are ignorant, and most people just want to go along to get along. So that's what makes me nervous, is that when it comes to farmers, they're often too busy in the field to really understand the details.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought up the COVID Psyop, because that was an opportunity for people to really start to see things for what it is, right? As the government showed its ugly side to some people for the first time. Now, there's a lot of farmers out there, chicken farmers, people who have cows and stuff, who are concerned with the new talk of a new coming potential flu bird pandemic that may shut down their farms and businesses. What are you hearing, in the farming scene in terms of what they're potentially planning with this bird flu?
Well, what I'm hearing from farmers is actually kind of good news, is that most farmers aren't buying it. The ones that I know, which may be, a bit of a microcosm in the farming scene, but I've been traveling a lot in Canada this year, and I've talked to a lot of just average people, and especially average farmers, and it's the furthest thing from people's minds. However, that doesn't mean a good propaganda campaign can't change that. But I am fairly optimistic that people just aren't going to go for it this time, because the last one was so painful and so obvious. Now people have a pretty sour taste in their mouth. So I think people's default position these days is to be at least very skeptical of anything the government says. So I think that's good. But you never know, all it takes is one sort of false flag event to really freak people out and shake them out of their boots to be like, oh no, this one's different. Right? And that's usually what it takes. So we'll see.
Well, you must have seen a large uptick in the amount of people post-COVID who got interested in homesteading and growing food, right? Like that particular Psyop has a bright side, because all kinds of people started realizing, hey, I might have to fend for myself here. Right?
It has, and it did, and I do see that silver lining for sure. It seems like there's been this big bifurcation of society, and that's probably going to continue. It's hard to get a bearing on what the numbers are, though, because sometimes you go, well, everybody must be awake now, everybody must have figured this out. But then, I was driving through the lower mainland today, and I saw people with, still with gloves and masks driving cars by themselves. So this is summertime in British Columbia, and there's some people out there still doing that. So, it's hard to say where we're at with numbers, but I think when it comes to the New World Order and all these things that they're going to do, I think at this point, they're just gonna dial up the amount of shit they throw at the wall to see what sticks. They always throw shit at the wall to see what sticks. Now it's just gonna be, let's throw a bunch of stuff out there and see what people go with, because what's it going to be this time? But it makes me wonder with all the AI technology we have now, and you look at some of these AI videos, right? They're so realistic. Like, did you see that one with the cat walking through a street, and it was completely artificially created, and it looked so real? Whereas that technology, if it's the consumer level now, has been around for a while, I'm sure, for the deep state. So it makes me think that with all these different psyops they could run, now with AI and the ability to create these trial balloons, if you will, so quickly, they could literally throw thousands of them out there at once. And just kind of wait to see what people bite at. Just with social media, they throw a little bit here and see where the likes go and the clicks go. Whereas in the age of the legacy media industrial complex, it was harder to run those campaigns, and they had to be sort of singular. Whereas maybe now, post-COVID especially, when they think people might not buy it, they could just throw a bunch of stuff. I mean, look what's going on right now. Stock market crashing. We got this new potential war in Iran. Probably a bunch of BS. Probably controlled by Israel entirely. But we got all kinds of stuff. And then the bird flu thing. So I think what we're seeing is kind of what I was calling for a long time, is that they're just going to keep dialing it up and throwing shit out there and hope that some people go with some of it.
Well, when COVID hit, a lot of people were like, man, I was caught off guard. I should have been growing my own food like 2-3 years ago. Like, so are we in that position now again? Like, could people be saying now about 2024, man, that would have been a good time to start?
Yeah. I would say it's never too late to start, so just start. But potentially, I mean, at the same time though, during the COVID show, we saw a lot of things that really, probably you and I were going like, wow, this is probably the one that's going to shut down the food system. Because we saw, remember the Suez Canal being blocked, and the train...
chains everywhere.
Yeah, all the fertilizer plants being destroyed. There was so many things where a lot of people were saying, this is the thing that's going to set it off. But it didn't totally set it off. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, so that potentially still could come very soon. This powder keg moment, essentially, this set off situation, where if you are caught off guard, it's just going to be too late. But I think food is going to be one of the most important things moving forward, because we often talk about getting free from the government, getting free from the banks, but a lot of people don't realize that they can't rely on the grocery stores either moving forward into this scenario world that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way I like to think about it in sort of a broad way these days is you need to have as much agency over the things that you need to live as possible. So food is certainly one of those. Water is a real big one, because if you don't have water, you can't grow food. And so, on a homestead context, I tell people you should have at least 2 different sources of water on your homestead. Like, I've got 3 on my place. I've got a drilled well, I've got ponds that capture snowmelt, and I can get rainwater off the roof. So I've got 3 sources, and so the more the better. But getting agency over all of these things that you need to live is so important: food, water, energy, and shelter. And don't, people get kind of overwhelmed with, well, if it's not all or it's nothing. But that's not really how you should think about it. You should think about each thing. Say it's food, water, energy, shelter, 4 things. Think about how much agency you have over that, and then think about incrementally increasing that for each thing. So, start with a small garden, right? And then that can grow to a bigger garden, grow to a bigger garden. Start with a backup generator for your power. Start with some stored water, then maybe some rainwater catchment, so on and so forth. You can keep adding things to the mix to get yourself less squeezable when times get tough.
Now, this is just a small slice of the pie of the type of stuff that you teach in some of your programs. If anybody is not familiar with your work, talk just a little bit about some of the stuff that they can find, on your website and if they sign up.
Yeah, so freedomfarmers.com, we have about 20 different courses that are all on regenerative, small-scale farming, things like this, homesteading, resilience, basically. And that's been my mission for 15 years now, is to encourage people to diversify themselves. Just like you diversify your assets or your investments, diversify yourself in how you get the things that you need to live. Food is a big part of that. That's been my main thing for many years, but you got to start somewhere. So pick one and just try to incrementally increase it. But freedomfarmers.com is where I post these courses. People can still find me on YouTube and stuff, Off Grid with Curtis Stone. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, is helping people get that, start with resilience, get to a form of security, get to a form of anti-fragility too, if you will, to a point of sovereignty, right? Because sovereignty isn't just about one thing. People think about the law, being a sovereign man, but it's really about all the things. What do you need to live? Try to get more sovereign in all of those things.
Yeah. Well said. Sovereignty comes in all sorts of different aspects of your life. So does, just decentralizing yourself from essentially all of it, really, and being fully self-sustainable, 100% function, and be able to function on your own, essentially, right? I would say that's like one of the things that the powers that not be fear the most.
For sure. They don't want people. I mean, I always say, whatever the New World Order is telling you to do the opposite. But they want you to be completely centralized, have everything you need in your life to be centralized so that they can turn it off. And it's like that classic Henry Kissinger quote, it's like, who controls the food supply can control the people. And there's something about controlling the money and so on and so forth. Is, hey, they're telling you how they're going to control you. Mm-hmm. So they're giving you the opportunity to get out. So are you going to take that opportunity or not?
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Guys, I want to encourage you guys to take that opportunity. If you've been sitting on the fence about when it comes to how to dive into growing food, this is the man who can help you do that. So check those links in the description. Curtis, any final thoughts on just, this crazy time that we're living in, this post-COVID world?
Yeah, I would say, stay positive. And once you start to take your power back, you'll kind of get addicted to it, and you'll find that it's a quite an enjoyable thing to do. To have more agency over your life is an empowering thing. And so it's easy to get stuck in the doom and gloom. And if you find yourself there, get out in the garden, get out there and do something to start working towards becoming more resilient for yourself.
Well said. I couldn't agree more myself. Guys, make sure you check that link in the description. Make sure you sign up and follow Curtis's work. Thanks so much for breaking it all down for us today, man.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.